On January 31st of 2023, I took on this e-commerce brand right here, which was struggling heavily when it came to Google Ads and just getting the results in general. And despite spending thousands upon thousands of dollars every single month, and we scaled it to roughly $277,911 per month. Now, if we go on to this e-commerce brand right here, look at last month's results, we can see that in February, it was not really around 277 grand, which I'm referring to, and it was definitely not that level in January before we started handling this account. However, now if we change it to this month right here, and in fact, I'm recording this video on the 22nd of March, so we're just gonna calculate the overall results so far within this month, and I'm gonna make sure that it's March 1 to 21st. What we're gonna do is we're gonna open up the calculator right here, and we're gonna do some calculations to understand if it is really at that level. So $196,305.02. And we're gonna divide it by the number of days it took for that to happen, which is 21 days. So roughly about $9,300 every single day. And if we just multiply that by around 30, that's $280,000 this given month. So it's actually a little bit higher than we are projecting. Now, you might be wondering, how was this possible, that too majority with Google Ads? And that's exactly what we're gonna cover in this video. But before we get to that level, let's first understand a little bit of context of this e-commerce brand. So this specific e-commerce store owner actually came to me under my Google Ads agency, Your Marketing, right after they kind of purchased this business. So this is a brand new owner. The owner before pretty much gave up on this business, even though it was not doing that bad in my opinion. I mean, if we look at the last few months from September of 2022 all the way to the end of December of 2022, we can see that it had actually started to scale up, but after December ended, essentially that's when it kind of went back to normal pre-Christmas levels. Maybe that was one reason why the owner, the previous one at least, decided to sell it. But regardless, this brand new owner came to us under my Google Ads agency, and we began work on the 31st of January. So now that we covered that, let's start understanding the step-by-step process I took this e-commerce brand through to go from doing barely $100,000 in a given month to now almost 3xing it just within a matter of 2 months. So first things first, we're gonna go back to January and look at the month as a whole. So again, during that month, it did roughly 126K, but right after we started working together, which was at the end of January, so starting February, you will start to notice something very interesting. And that interesting thing is the sales here actually dipped downwards if you compare it to the previous time period. And there's a very specific reason why that happens. In fact, I'm gonna be straight up honest with you. We do this on purpose. Now, this process here is called the Deoptimization process. We do it on purpose because we are transitioning from using all of the old campaigns this brand had to now using only the brand new ones which we launched, or revamping the old ones. And of course, every time you touch any working campaign within Google Ads, it goes through an optimization period, and within that time period, things can kind of go down for a small period of time. That's exactly what you're seeing here. So if we go on over to the Google Ads account, you will see exactly this Deoptimization period in effect. This is pretty much necessary if you want to do a big change within your Google Ads account. And sometimes, like in this case, it was just absolutely necessary because there were a lot of different issues going on before we started working together, such as conversion tracking issues, overall fluctuation in sales, and of course, sales still fluctuate, but there are more days when sales are a bit more steady. The ROAS and profitability is a bit more steady. And as you can see, we have been kind of increasing the overall ad spend and everything so far from that time period onwards until now. But kind of to go back to what I was mentioning, in the early portion of January, if we look at the overall return on ad spend for this account, it was definitely not so ideal for this brand and the KPIs this brand was trying to achieve. So if we look at the all campaigns running during that time, we scroll all the way down, we can see that the overall ROAS was a 2.09x, which is not the best. It was barely at break even. And of course, conversion tracking here was actually a mess. So this number, this was not even fully accurate at all. I think it was around a 1.9x for this given period. But essentially, because of those issues, because of conversion tracking issues, our main goal is not to just continue what's working. My main goal always is to come in and do something different, because obviously if something was working, we wouldn't be here working with this ad account to begin with. So as you can see right here, out of all of the campaigns running, we decided to shut off a few of the campaigns which just didn't make sense to have during that time period, such as this one right here and a few others at the bottom which had already stopped spending money at that point, but we shut it off. Now if you look at the campaigns currently running, it's actually a few of the same campaigns which they originally had running. All we did was revamp these campaigns and launch a few more extra ones. So during this time period, these were the campaigns which we had running, and what we did along with starting brand new campaigns is we started work on the back end. This is the major part of the first step, which is again revamping the strategy, fixing up the back end conversion tracking issues, Google Merchant Center product feed issues, SEO for the product titles, even the descriptions, images, because that's 90% of the results with Google Shopping, and so on and so forth. So my first step is always to focus on the foundation, because think of it as a building. If a building has a very weak foundation, sooner or later it's gonna come crashing down. It might not happen today, it might not even happen tomorrow, but 5 years down the line, 10 years down the line, it's eventually gonna cause chaos. And with Google Ads, it doesn't take that long to cause chaos. It can happen within a few days to a few weeks if you don't have a strong foundation. That's essentially the main issue that was going on with this brand. So along with fixing the foundation, our main goal was to get rid of those Google Merchant Center errors, because there were a lot of different errors going on. In fact, if we go inside one of the Performance Max campaigns, go over to products, we can see that some of the products still to this day have errors, because it does take a bit of time to really get through every single product and make sure it's not approved. But during that time period, there was a lot of different products that were disapproved, and this is because number one reason, they have 44,000 SKUs. So this is bound to happen, but you really need to control it if you want to get better results with your Google Ads campaigns, because product disapprovals is one of the number one reasons why most e-commerce brands fail to scale with Google Ads. That's because a weak feed equals weak results. The Google algorithm not really thinking you're taking this Google Ads platform too seriously, and that's when problems start to arise. But this is essentially what kind of led to the de-optimization period. So again, if we go back and look at the Shopify dashboard here, this was the de-optimization period where things just kind of took a turn for the worse, and many e-commerce store owners, they will also actually start to panic. And you might not clearly see it here, but during this time period, profitability had actually gone down a little bit more. But that is a necessary part after you fix up the foundation to then really start introducing this level of scale that started to come in. So step number 2 in this case, or step number 3, because step number 2 was the optimization, was to actually outline the perfect strategy for this e-commerce brand based on what was already running, and then kind of add in our little bit of twist to make things better. So this brand at that time had a few different Performance Max campaigns running. One Performance Max campaign was just targeting a few specific products, and the other Performance Max campaign was just targeting every single product out there. Now, this would have been an ideal strategy if it was working, because during that time period, this strategy was really not bringing the best results. So we had to kind of redo the strategy a bit to make it work better. What we did is we essentially diverted these two campaigns into one Performance Max campaign for the best collection, meaning the product within that collection selling the most, and another Performance Max campaign with all of the products that are currently not in the original Performance Max campaign to advertise. So it was a mixture of that 2-1 launch strategy I always talk about on my YouTube channel, but essentially the second campaign was just for all the products. The first one was for the best selling product or the best collections. And then we kind of added in some branded search campaigns, a dynamic search campaign, and that is pretty much it. And also one regular prospecting campaign for search. So that was pretty much our initial launch strategy. That's what we decided to go with, because again, we did not want to really segregate it too much, because number one, the budget was really not something that the client could afford at that level of 40,000 SKUs. So we had to take things a bit cautiously. So that's essentially what we did. These campaigns really started to take off. They started to scale after the conversion tracking was properly set up. And that's when really we started to kind of double down in terms of scaling. Now, looking at it on a very broad level from the 1st of February to March 22nd, you can clearly see the cost also start to go up while the conversion value over cost, which is the ROAS, start to become steady. Now, this was super important for this brand because we were starting to finally scale and get some results that too at a level of profitability. So we were no longer just doing these things when the results were not profitable. So if we look from February 1st to March 20th, we can see a 69% increase in the total revenue from the previous time period, which is a crazy number for this e-commerce brand, again, because it was really on the downward trend. And if yesterday's sales as well as 67% increase. So things really took off. Our Google Ads strategy was working, but exactly what did we do to scale it? So there were a few things we launched during this time period that really helped this brand take off. The first thing we launched was a second chance campaign. This is called a second chance campaign. Essentially what this is this is a campaign to test all the products which did not work in our initial campaign. So we launched a second chance campaign. As you can see, it's doing fairly well at a 3.05x ROAS. Another thing we did is we launched a few search campaigns to go along with the dynamic search, and they have been starting to provide some decent results. But search campaign was really the main thing we wanted to expand with, because shopping, we were already covering all sides and angles. This led us to more dynamic search campaign, which is essentially what this is. Surprisingly, we found out that dynamic search works much better for this ad account compared to a normal search campaign for collections or products. So that's why it's worth a try and test to see what works the best for your ad account. But kind of to increase the overall scale along with that, we started increasing the budgets rapidly for whatever was working. The Performance Max that was scaling, we raised it all the way up to $280 a day, another Performance Max campaign at $160 a day, and we really started to double down on the budgets as well as decreasing the target ROAS limits, because when you are scaling, it's best to lower your restrictions. You don't want to get in your own way when it comes to scaling, and the best way to prevent that from happening is to lower the target ROAS. In fact, we started to do that as soon as we noticed the KPIs were getting met. But we mixed A/B testing with the scaling of the budgets and decreasing the target ROAS to really get that extra leeway when it came to conversion rates, because the conversion rate did go up by 32%, as you can see right here. So to kind of recap, in terms of the overall approach we took for this e-commerce brand, step number one has always been to, first of all, optimize the back end, including optimizing the current campaigns as needed based on a given set strategy. And this is going to lead to step number two, which I did here, which was a de-optimization period. I mean, sales had started to tank downwards, and of course the e-commerce store owner was starting to get worried. But if you're doing things right, this should immediately result in a bounce back, and it can happen after a few days or a few weeks. It depends on your niche and your e-commerce brand in general, but this step should be followed by then step number three, which is implementing brand new campaigns based on that given strategy, revamping old campaigns further, and then finally bringing it down to scaling. So very simple step-by-step process that works here, and you definitely want to give it a try for your own e-commerce brand. But if this is too much work for you, or you would rather get some help doing all of these things I mentioned and scaling your brand to the next level with Google Ads, and you're already doing $40,000 or more per month in revenue, go onto my website at yourmarketing.com and book a free call with me to see how we can possibly work together and make that happen. But I want you to watch this video on how to rank number one with Google Shopping Ads, because a lot of those tactics mentioned in this video, we went over with this e-commerce brand right here to make that happen.